Okay, here I am with Jocelyn Whipple, and we're at her clothing exchange, which she does in Montbron every year.
2 times a year.
2 times a year, 2 times a year. And we've spoken lots about clothing, and I know it's your passion, used clothing, reusing clothing. So before we talk about this exactly, why is it so important to you about, the reuse of clothing? We talked about waste and
Well, basically, I've been sort of following the story of clothing consumption and fibers and all the different issues that surround this sort of intersection of sustainability, environmental impacts of textiles, and then also the kind of layers around social justice and the social impacts as well around clothing for the last sort of 20 years. One of the biggest problems right now is that we're basically the brands, the system that we've created around fashion, which is sometimes referred to as fast fashion.
Fast fashion, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah,
and this kind of hyper consumption mode that we're all in. When it comes to textiles and clothing, the race to the bottom means that the quality of the fibers and the types of fibers that clothing is being made from is becoming cheaper and cheaper and lower quality and harder to recycle, harder to reclaim, and is basically just not lasting as long. Or if it is lasting as long, it's lasting as long but in the form of plastics.
Right, right.
So it's not a short answer. It's not. It's a really complex issue.
Right.
And this kind of idea of preserving and preserving clothes from landfill is kind of one element of a much bigger, kind of more complex system around fashion, clothing, and sustainability.
And even people would think like, oh, but I donate my old clothes when I buy new clothes, and it goes to Africa, it goes to countries. And I know that is a very loaded thing there, because people think they're doing the right thing, but what happens with those clothes go to Africa or Asia or wherever they
so over the last 20 years, basically, with this kind of degradation of fiber quality, the quality of clothing that's being donated and sent abroad is also getting lower and lower. Sure. And ultimately, people anywhere don't want clothes that they can't wear, that they can't repair, that are dirty, that are broken. So the system around clothing reuse is also deeply problematic now because of the volume. It's the volume and the quality that is a problem.
Right.
And so what's happening is that countries in Africa, South America, all over the world, not so much in the global north, but even now, here we can see, the volume of clothing that we're being impacted
look
by.
Around,
And
unfortunately, a lot of these clothes are made in those countries, shipped here, and then we redonate them back to the countries of origin.
Yes and no. I mean, the countries who are manufacturing tend to be more in the Southeast Asia.
Right.
Those countries, they're not really receiving, and they are receiving, and they are downcycling. But where there's the second-hand markets where people are trying to resell clothing, it tends to be more in the African continent, West Africa, but also in South America as well.
Right.
And they're basically drowning in the volume of textiles.
I'm sorry, you interrupted in what you were saying.
Basically, so this is one way that we, I'm trying to bring things back to a really local level. Okay, so what can we do at a local level? What can we look at in terms of what our resources are, what the problems are, and then start to kind of mobilize people and get people re-engaged with taking responsibility first and foremost for the clothes that we have, and then looking at ways that we can kind of be more accountable and be more mindful about what we're doing with our clothes.
Mindful. And also we talked, a little bit of everyone is kind of aware of this, the microplastics, those are in like a lot of the high-tech clothing, which is a huge industry that is building with, high-tech breathability, but the downside of that, there's wool, of course, there's the merino wool side, which is maybe a tad better, I don't know. But as far as the microplastic make into the oceans and to the water systems,
basically, I just saw another report recently, which is tracking, synthetic fiber production globally over the years, and it's been increasing over the last 20 years, and unfortunately, the projections are that it's just set to keep increasing. And so there's no respite in sight at the moment, sadly, as much as there's been a lot of work on kind of people's awareness changing over the last 20 years. It's still this kind of hyper consumption, cheap clothing, this kind of throwaway culture around it. People feel like you know, and also the separation where people are buying on screens. I find that people are not touching fabrics anymore,
Sure.
and they're not actually putting things, they're not smelling them.
Right,
So
walking into a shop.
yeah,
And
so there's this kind of extra level of separation around fiber understanding that people are, especially young people, are kind of having to navigate.
And I know you're passionate about linen. You in here in France, you find you go to a lot of secondhand shops and you find linen. What's the passion behind linen?
Well, so from a sort of sustainability perspective, linen is a natural fiber. It comes from here. It has a huge potential for longevity. It can be worn. Some of the pieces, some of the fabrics I work with are like literally 100 years old. And
wow.
Fine.
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff. Yeah, it's amazing.
And so, and then when it's done, it just goes back safely into the ground.
So it properly decomposes.
It's completely biodegradable. It's a biodegradable natural fiber. So for me, it's just like a no. I mean, it's just it's a kind of the perfect fiber. That and hemp as well. So I've chosen to hone in on that as just.
And how about wool? I didn't mention wool because in the sport world, merino wool is like a big thing.
Wool is wonderful as well. I see that as the other most sustainable fiber here in the global north, in the west, in Europe and North America as well, and other parts of the global north. But unfortunately, what happened with merino, particularly because you mentioned it, sheep were exported down to Australia, which is not where they come from. And in order to farm them down there, they use some techniques like mulesing and other, like a lot of
mulesing.
Mulesing is when they basically take off the layer of the back of the sheep. They strip it off a layer of skin so that this blowfly insect doesn't infect them. Right. And so you get it's called mulesing. Mulesing is horrible.
Okay, yeah, I was down in Australia. I've seen the blowflies in the sheep, and so I can imagine that would not be good for the wool industry. So
there's lots of animal welfare issues.
Of course. That's why I asked the question, because you know, every time we think we're doing something, there's always a little backstory that goes, well, maybe where is it sourced from and where is it coming from?
So whatever fiber you're using with, it's really important to just follow it all the way back, and then be sure that you know what you're dealing with is something that you feel comfortable with.
So it brings us to here.
Yeah.
So what's going on, and what's been the reception here in Montbrun for the last
this is the fourth year that I'm running. I think it's fourth or maybe fifth year I've been running this rock, and it's at the Grand Jet, which is our amazing local venue.
Yes, I do a lot of interviews in the Grand Jet, so this is very appropriate to do another one.
And basically the idea is that people bring clothes that they don't wear, that they've fallen out of love with, or they've grown out of whatever. They don't have them, but they're good quality. They're not, you know, and they just bring them and they leave them, and we organize them into different categories, colors, and we've got men's, women's, kids, and then people take things, and it's just basically what it is. It's completely free. It's basically it puts clothing into an unbranded, unpriced scenario, and it changes completely the approach of the person when they're approaching a piece of clothing. They're not thinking about how much it costs, and they're not thinking about, you know, what brand it is. They're literally then forced or kind of
feeling the fabric.
They're feeling it, they're trying it on, and also there's a social aspect to it as well, because everyone gets together around it. Lots of people come. So often we find, you know, someone will show up, they'll open their bag out, and then there'll be like these mini direct swaps.
And yesterday was lovely because we have a place called the Kata around here. To explain, where refugees come, and they live, and we had refugees from Bangladesh and from Africa, West Africa, Nigeria, who came, and they were like, they lit up because they were just able to get a pair of shoes and get a jacket or something for the baby, and it was just lovely to see the smile on their face, because you know that they have it very tough. So it serves multi-purposes.
And I mean, the reality is that there's probably about, I don't know, 50 people who come through here on a weekend, and the volume of clothes is just every time I'm like,
it's mind-boggling. I mean, racks and racks and buckets. So a lot more comes in than goes out.
And the actual problem is that we always end up with more than we can deal with, and so then we still have this issue of like, where do we take it and who wants it? And you know, so just being really conscious of when you bring a piece of clothing into your life, is it really right for you? Why? Where is it going to go? And the fact that, you know, understanding, which is what I do when I work with brands, is trying to get people to understand that your clothing doesn't just be made and then get sold one time. It's going into a secondary, a tertiary market. It's going into a system that is a global system, and you know, clothing everything returns to the earth as either a nutrient or a poison.
Right.
And that's the same goes for
clothing.
So,
interesting. So is it, you said you've been working with it. Do you have a website? Do you have you do a couple of different projects. Just tell me about a couple of the projects.
I've got a studio up in Parlavile, which is near here, which is where I'm making things with linen, and I'm also doing mending. I'm a mender, so I do lots of retouche, they call it.
Right.
And I'm involved I do consulting for brands and different kinds of fashion businesses. I help them to kind of navigate sustainability and social justice. And I also have another project called Mend Assembly, which is it's a kind of collective studio model.
And that's in England, Spain,
in UK.
here?
Yeah, it's in Totnes, Huddersfield and Ryde on the Isle of Wight. We've got kind of 3 locations.
Okay.
I kind of count the studio here as one.
Right, because when I first visited you in Spain, weren't you doing it down there as well?
Yeah, I was launching it. Yeah.
So that moved to here.
Yeah, and there was so those are kind of the main projects that I have at the moment. But I'm always exploring new ways to kind of develop this conversation, and I'm really focused now on locality and localism, and I think it's really interesting for me to see how fashion, well-being, sustainability, localism, and also craft, just making skills all kind of are coming back, and people, and just making spaces for people to access information and actually access clothing in a really healthy way. Right,
cool. Thank you very much. I mean, it's great. Thanks for that. Is there a website that comes to mind that you could point people to?
My website is jocelynwhipple.com.
Jocelyn?
JOCLYNWHIPPLE.com.
Okay, jocelynwhipple.com. And you have other information there? Can people be...
or you can find out everything there. And I'm at Joss Whipple on Instagram.
At Joss Whipple on Instagram.
Yes.
JOSS.
JOSS. Yes.
Okay, Joss. Well, thank you, Joss Whipple. And there we go from the truck in the Mumbron here, and that works. It's been here. I got a lot of my clothes. I have every year. I have my shirt on, and the jacket I'm wearing, secondhand shops. I don't think I know it.
I think I got this swap. In fact, I got this jumper that I'm wearing from here last year. I got these trousers are from the swap. This is secondhand.
Yeah, I have some from the swap, some from secondhand stores. Thank you, Joe Diamini, TTRP TV, and thanking Joss Whipple for her work and bringing consciousness to the clothing we wear and where it goes. Okay, until next time, be well.